Boys and girls, it is Miss Oates back with another reading review video. This time we are going over Recounting Stories and Central Message. So by the end of this video, you are going to be able to recount a story by telling the key events in the order that they happened, and you're also going to be able to determine the central message from the key details in the story. And of course, our focus standard for this video is RL.2.2, recount stories and determine their central message, lesson, or moral. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we're going to be talking about is how to recount a story. So I want you to go ahead and give me a high five. Awesome job. Keep your hand up. When we recount a story, we want to retell the events and details in the story in the order in which they happened using our own words. And we're going to use our hand to help. So again, are you raising your hand up in the air? Give me another high five, please. Perfect. So let's go ahead and retell or learn how to recount or retell a story using our hand as a help. First off, go ahead and show me your index finger, please. When you raise one index finger and you're retelling a story, you're going to want to talk about the characters. All right, go ahead and raise up your thumb. When you raise your thumb as you're counting to 5 to retell a story, you're going to want to describe the setting or when and where the story takes place. All right, go ahead and stick up that middle finger along with your other 2 fingers. When you stick that middle finger up, you are going to want to describe the problem in the story. That's what's happening to the characters. What is the big problem or thing that the characters need to solve? Go ahead and raise up that ring finger. And when you raise up that ring finger, you're going to describe the events in the story, the beginning, middle, and end. And you're going to describe those events in the order that they happen. You don't want to talk about the ending first before you talk about the beginning and talk about the middle. You're going to spoil everything. And finally, your pinky finger is going to be where you talk about the solution or how the character fixed or solved the problem. So you know how sometimes you have a cut on a finger and mom puts like a Band-Aid on it? A solution is kind of like a Band-Aid. You're fixing the problem that the character has. So again, you can use your hand or give 5 to recount a story. The thumb describes your setting. The index finger talks about the characters. The middle finger is talking about the problem. The ring finger is talking about your events. And then the pinky finger is talking about the solution. But of course, recounting is only one part of the standard. So now that we have learned on how to use our hand to recount stories, let's go ahead and talk about central message. The central message is a lesson about life that the author of a story wants to share. So, for example, in Little Red Riding Hood learned a very important lesson. The moral of Little Red Riding Hood is to never trust strangers. Remember, she trusted the big bad wolf, and the big bad wolf ended up coming and eating her grandmother, and then Little Red walked in, and all was a whole mess. I highly suggest that you have not read Little Red Riding Hood. You do. It's so good. But the moral is the lesson that character learns, or a lesson that us as a reader of Little Red Riding Hood can learn. And I want you to remember that the term central message, moral, and lesson are all synonyms. They all mean the same thing. So if you hear your teacher tell you, what is the central message of this story? She's asking you to identify what lesson do you learn from this story. The same thing with moral. If you read on a test, what is the moral of this story? Again, they want you to figure out what lesson can you learn from this story. Now that we've talked about recounting and we've talked about central message, let's go ahead and practice. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to read a story called Jealous Birds. Now, this story is actually called a fable. A fable, boys and girls, are about animals who learn some sort of lesson. And these animals have sometimes a human characteristic. Sometimes they'll talk and sometimes they'll learn a lesson like a human will. And these fables are often retold over and over again. Some of these fables are thousands of years old. This one right here is a relatively new fable. And I want you to work with me and figure out what lesson can we learn from this story. And this story is called Jealous Birds. Please follow along as I read. Oops, let me get my laser. Emu and flamingo were two birds at the zoo. The only problem, the emu and flamingo looked very different. Flamingo's feathers were bright pink and emu's feathers were a dull gray. Emu never felt very beautiful around Flamingo, which made her feel sad. Flamingo asked Emu what was wrong one day, and Emu explained how her feathers weren't beautiful. Flamingo told her that her feathers don't matter. It doesn't change her personality. Flamingo also reminded her how she is the fastest bird at the zoo. So now that I've read this story, we're going to go ahead and we're going to answer some questions. So let's go ahead and read that first question together. That first question is, who are the characters in the story? Well, the characters in our story... The characters in our story are Emu and Flamingo. And I know this because those are the first 3 words in the sentence. Emu and Flamingo. And those words are also repeated throughout the story as well. And they start with a capital letter. That's a big hint. That's what the character's name is. So what is the moral of the story? That means, what is the lesson that we can learn from this story? Let me think about it for a second. Well, I learned that everyone is unique in their own way. So Flamingo has these beautiful pink feathers, but Emu is the fastest bird at the zoo. They're both unique in their own special ways. And Flamingo reminds Emu of that her feathers don't matter. She's a fast runner. She's got a great personality. So it's important that we look at ourselves and we identify what exactly are our uniquenesses that we have. All right, so which character learned this lesson? In a fable, it's always one character that learns a specific lesson. And in our story this time, it is Emu. Emu is the character that learns the lesson in this story. And then finally, our final question is to identify, where does the story take place? Well, in that very first sentence, I read that the birds are where? At the zoo. That is where it tells me my setting, or the thumb part of recounting a story. All right, boys and girls, that is it for this video. I sure hope that you have learned what central message or moral or lesson is, and I hope you're able to use your fingers to help recount a story. So before we go ahead and give me another high five. Awesome job, awesome job, awesome job. And I will see you next time. Bye.